As a director of the Studio Art program, I often, as you imagine, I often ask myself, what does this mean? It is very much, the meaning is very much based on practice. All studio artists that I know and my own studio experience, this is how I try to understand what studio art means. The group of studio artists who today are having their graduation ceremony arrived at SACI the same day I took office as director of the MFA. We made a parallel path during these almost 2 years, and consequently, I must be forgiven for feeling even closer to this group. We were all together most of the time in the studio during the whole of our first year. I had to listen to their conversations, sometimes trivial or even nonsense, and they were listening to mine. At the studio, and this is the first truth about the studio life, at the studio it is very difficult to keep secrets. A studio philosophy is something that we want to transmit in this program, now seriously. What is an artist's studio? What rules should we apply in our studio? The ethics should be the same that we use outside. Are social politics, as applied to the city, the polis, also useful inside the studio? What is the role of the artist in the studio? In our studio, are we eventually the next after God, like the captain in his ship? Do we work for ourselves or for the others? What if we got bored during lonely studio work? Or if we get bored during lonely studio work? Should we seek immediate pleasure? Should the potential public have a word to say in what we do? What about the curators, the art galleries, and other partners? Art speak, is it important? How to handle immediate success or temporary failure? We are kept asking these and other questions, and the answers keep changing. I have been a studio artist for more than 40 years now, and my answers are still tentative. But the fact that we are in the studio and our mind is awake creates the standard of professional consistency that we could all witness at the MFA exhibition at Galleria Il Ponte, one of the historical and most professional contemporary galleries in Florence. So this means that we are not the only ones who believe in this consistency. One thing that I'm happy to say about all 5 graduating studio art students is that in their own totally different way, they are highly trained professional artists. More than try some kind of psychological descriptive praise for which I'm not totally equipped, I am more than happy to assure above reasonable doubt that they received a strong studio art education. I will first mention Jane Mason, Lindsay Johnson, and Maria Nissen. My dear colleague Daria Filardo will then refer to Dexter and Victoria Hodge. Jane Mason would certainly win the first prize for regular work effort. If such prize did exist, we might create one next year. Jane painted every single day from 9, sometimes to late evening. She has already largely made up for the years when her life was outside the studio. Our typical dialogues would be, Jane, look at the East for inspiration. Invariable, the answer would be, my painting is still not finished. Or else, Jane, the head is too big. Yes, it is still not finished. But even when we thought she was not listening and was just being polite, as she always is, she was attentive, and her work now shows much more power and spontaneity than in the beginning of the program. And her Eastern roots have found her way back into her work. Self-representation has replaced a more voyeuristic and superficial themes. Jane's work has improved immensely, showing that in studio art, effort has its own rewards. It's a story with a happy ending. Lindsay Johnson was the best companion in the studio during the first year. She would constantly paint. In the first year, her studio was one of the most dangerous ones regarding painting contamination. It was impossible to enter without getting paint stains on her clothes. She was constantly building and destroying huge paintings depicting human figures, overpainting or ripping them apart into pieces according to her mood. This year, she built a whole new systematic approach based on autobiographical narrative, full of gender sensitivity, profound human and personal drama. Being an extremely courageous and brave woman, following other social movements that did something similar, she faced and through painting exposed publicly some of the main questions that had haunted her youth. Studio art thus became a healing ritual, exorcising the evil that affected her growth by making it blatant. It also became a social ritual by acting on other human beings who identify with the same issues. It worked. With the help of wonderful advisors like Molly Di Grazia and Margherita Abozzo, who are actually here, her paintings and other contents, her writing as well, are vibrant manifestos expressing freedom from trauma. And she did all this while painting like an angel, quoting Margherita, who is also here. Instead, all my interactions with Maria Nissan would rather start as follows. Filipe, where are my 13 lights? Filipe, I need 16 pieces of wood forming corners of 90 degrees. Filipe, where can I buy Arabic coffee? Filipe, where is Luca? All these very precise and urgent needs relating to logistics show us someone who from the beginning at SACI knew she could not afford to lose 5 minutes since she had gigantic tasks ahead of her and the whole world waiting for her work. Her certainties and self-assurance were such that the only thing she asked, or rather demanded, were the conditions to build all her space-challenging projects. For her, SACI was at the same time a school, a studio, and a center of contemporary art, where she could share her work while still waiting for larger challenges. Her resolute activity put pressure on SACI's structure based on decades of short study abroad programs. SACI was forced to improve and raise to new levels of graduate activity. During these years, her eyes scanned everything that was or looked contemporary in Florence and the rest of Europe. Even if she speaks limited Italian, she seems to know everyone, and lots of people know her. One of her most trusted advisors, Pietro Galliano, said during the graduate review board that she was the first MFA SACI studio art student who really connected the program to the outside world in Florence. Her remarkable record during the SACI, during the MFA years, is to be continued by a joint exhibition with Victoria de Blasi on the next May 3rd in Le Murate in Florence. The first of a series of exhibitions and other works that I, even without having Coffee Future reading skills, predict will never end. Thank you.